feels like, I don't know, like dystopian slop, like presented as a nice meal.
So some of my regular followers don't know this, but I owned and ran a restaurant for a number of years, and there's kind of something to what this young lady is talking about. And I think I'm going to try and indirectly, maybe, I don't want to answer a question, but I want to echo sort of a statement. This is an elective topic, so I mean, like anybody else that, if you know that I kind of usually color other stuff, like just scroll past this. But her video makes a solid point in that restaurants don't have the same type of feel anymore. And I mean that, like, not just the dining experience, although that's a problem, but I mean the actual food itself doesn't have the same type of feel. And I don't mean mouth feel. I'm not talking about complexity. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about it seems off, right? And I think more people notice this. I notice it, right? It's getting more and more difficult for me to go to any of the chain restaurants as a result of this, because of what she's talking about. So let me give you what I think is causing some of this. Restaurants years ago used to be owned by proverbial mom and pop, right? Like where the owners worked there, and they cared about the food. They cared about waste. They cared about not, poisoning their customers. They cared about all this stuff, right? And many of them used to care about their employees too. So a lot of their employees, while maybe it wasn't necessarily a dream job, at least the employers did care that their employees showed up and they did a good job, and that they kind of like exuded that to the customers, right? That's changed. That's completely different now. So that's one problem. The other one is that the corporate meat grinder. Let me explain what I mean by this. So in my restaurant, I would get calls all the time. Axel, we love this restaurant name of yours, and we, like, my God, your food looks awesome. We want to franchise this. And I would turn them down. Like, no, I don't want to do that. The reason is because I know what ends up happening with big corporate franchises. It stops being a restaurant and just turns into a cash cow. Okay, it stops having anything to do with actually making a good product, and it just becomes how many dollars can you turn, right? So the quality has to go down, right? And I won't be a part of it. That's why I closed, because, well, if I can't provide the same level of quality to the customers, then I don't want to be a part of it, because I don't want my name on it. That's the reality, okay? Think of it like movie directors, right? There are movie directors that have the project get taken over from them, and they say, you know what, do whatever you want, take my name off of it, right? It's the same way that a lot of chefs are, right? Do whatever you want, take my name off it. I don't want to be associated with what you're going to do. The corporate meat grinder idea is they see a really good idea, and then they want to bring that idea to the masses, bring it to them. As opposed to, that's not always a good idea. Sometimes it's actually important for you to go to that restaurant, even if it is 2,200 miles away. I used to do that. I used to go 2,200 miles for a burger. I'm not kidding about this. Because they were really, really, really good. Their restaurant was awesome. And it was a tiny hole in the wall. You'd never even know it was there. And people would travel from hundreds of miles to go to this place, like in my case, because the quality was so good. And even the staff was okay, but the quality and everything about it was really good, and it was something that you went to. If corporate America, the big corporate meat grinders, right, get a hold of something like that and say, okay, let's bring this to the masses, they cannot maintain that quality and still siphon off huge amounts of money to pay out in interest rates for all the loans that they will inevitably take out to fund all of that. They cannot pay these ridiculous leases that they will inevitably have to pay to all of these rent seekers. They cannot pay out dividends to all the shareholders that they told was a good idea. And so now we're going to, because shareholders are entitled to a profit, I don't know where that came from. That's not a thing, but it's not a thing in any hedge fund agreement I've ever signed. Me guaranteed a profit that is a 2010 and forward thing. That's a boomer thing. That is not a normal business thing. They can't afford to pay the inevitable tax bill Because of course, as you make it bigger and bigger and bigger, right, the more and more money's coming in, which means the more and more tax implications you have. And even if you're paying lower taxes, you're still paying an enormous amount of money to people to get you out of the taxes. So all of these things factored versus a mom and pop where, let's say that I'm giving this analogy years ago, actually. I got the whiteboard out and everything. I did all of it for you guys. And I pointed this out, that if you have mom and pop who own their property, the land on which they sit, and then they put their restaurant on it, and they own that, and they own all their equipment, right? They don't have to pay a bunch of rent seekers. So therefore, they can produce a very high quality product and keep the price in check because they're not paying out everybody else. They don't have everybody else in their pockets trying to make money off it. In other words, the middleman economy. We talked about the middleman economy. Yeah, they don't have that because there's no middleman. It's just mom and pop and maybe the kids that run the place. So in the days now where we have everything is just run by a bunch of rent seekers and rapacious, greedy corporate weirdos and government scumbags, which is pretty much everybody. It's like 50% of GDP is corporate weirdos and government scumbags. I'm not kidding. That's how bad it's gotten. So yeah, it's really going to mess up restaurants. It's really going to mess up the way that food tastes. It's really going to mess up the way that everything feels because of all of this. And it isn't just corporate greed. You guys have got to stop that. This is governments, shareholders, everybody out there who has a 401k, you guys have no room to talk. If you have a 401k and you have money invested in all these giant companies like Food Corp or whatever the hell it is, Cisco and all these other giant mega corps that provide garbage food, yeah, you're trying to make, you want to make a return. Okay, well, the only way to do that is to make everything else suck. Mission accomplished. So, just my take from a business side, from a restaurant owner, from a consumer myself, from all, all of this. I've been at all levels of all of this game. And when you know how this stuff works, what you're talking about, what this young lady's talking about, is that the restaurants have no soul.